obviously, a lot of people are concerned about the implications, the slippery slope of total government power, the ability to black bag someone and put them in a hole that, you know, who knows if they're ever going to resurface, no right to due process, no trial, not even any formal accusations, perhaps, under this law. Do you see the same crazy implications under NDAA?
Yeah, well, basically what we're talking about here is, you know, a common scene in Iran. Like a van pulls up, puts a bag over somebody's head after a bunch of guys jump out, and then they throw him in the van and drive off, and that person's never seen again. This is what we've always associated with dictatorships all my life, and places that were full of quote-unquote bad guys. Well, with the NDAA, they have basically thrown out 3/4 of the Bill of Rights. And when Obama signed that, that's effectively the power that he gave to the federal government to do against the American people.
Well, exactly. It has a lot less to do with terrorism than it does the classic kind of Stalin-esque techniques. And of course, it's happened in so many other countries, as you recognize. Now, Virginia has already passed legislation regarding the NDAA, kind of really refuting the idea of kidnapping someone. Can you tell us the different types of legislation that are going on in Washington State, in Virginia? I believe Maryland and Tennessee are also on the list, among other states, Arizona and Oklahoma as well. Can you talk about what the different states are trying to work on and what other states might be considering this legislation?
Well, there's a host of states that are already drafting up versions of NDAA nullification bills. About a month ago, Matt Shea called me up, and he said, "Hey, have you heard about this NDAA thing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, absolutely. It's you know, it's a scary thing." And he asked me if 10th Amendment Center would be willing to help him and a few other legislators from around the Republic to write up a bill to nullify this and to say no at our state lines. And we jumped right on it. Collaboratively came up with a package of 4 bills that we call the Liberty Preservation Act. And this you know, on the lighter end for more timid legislators, just identifies it as such. And in certain cases where they feel like going all the way, like in Virginia, you mentioned the language stating it as kidnapping. They're actually talking about nullifying this and codifying into law penalties and legal action against federal agents that are found guilty of doing this to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to me we have multiple levels of overreach of power. Obviously, you cannot violate the Bill of Rights. Those are guaranteed rights to the individual and to the state, really something central to the 10th Amendment Center's work. But there's also that overreach of executive power just within the federal government powers and the way it's dispersed among the 3 branches. And so it seems to me it's all the more important that states take on this issue, and we hope this is something that's going to spread, because unfortunately the press has not taken on this issue as a major controversy the way it did the Patriot Act. Even though the Patriot Act was not effectively slowed, at least people were aware of the issue, and I don't see that with NDAA. People on the street do not seem to even know what's going on with this.
Yeah, they've been really effective at keeping it quiet, and of course you've got these information gatekeepers now that decide what Americans get to know about, and that's not how it was supposed to be in the first place either. But regardless, this is where we're at right now, and many states have already realized that the only way they're going to stop this is to do it at the state line. And I might add, it's not restricted to states right now. We have 3 counties in Colorado that have already passed resolutions against the NDAA, and we have 4 cities that have done the same. In Fremont, California, for example, that city, their NDAA legislation also says outright that they will be, you know, imprisoning or levying fines against federal agents that are kidnapping people in that city.
Right. And, you know, we had the TSA issue here in Texas. The House overwhelmingly voted to bar the TSA from basically doing things that would be considered molestation, a violation of not only privacy, but of the private parts, if you will. And we saw the feds come down, really intimidate the whole system, and work with some of their cronies to get it thrown out to make sure it didn't become an example to the country. And then on the opposite side of that, we see countries like Australia passing what may prove to be model legislation, telling people that if they don't go through the body scanners, they can't fly. And that's a really dangerous precedent in my eyes. What do you see happening, or what did you think anyway, of the situation with Texas and the TSA? And are states going to continue to fight on those fronts as well?
Well, in Texas, you had David Simpson introducing pretty strong TSA legislation last session that said, no, you can't do that. You can't grab people. You can't have these scanners operating. They just wanted to get rid of the whole thing. And of course, the federal government shot back with, okay, we won't allow planes to fly in Texas. If you guys pass this, we're just going to shut down all air travel in Texas. And that was their intimidation tactic. Last year, you know, the Texas legislature stood alone, and the House overwhelmingly, I think they unanimously passed the TSA bill, but the Senate was bullied into not doing it. This year, we've already got, I think, 3 or 4 different states who have TSA bills, and that also continues to be a theme. But it's not nearly as hot as the NDAA issue right now.
Right. Yeah, so with respect to the NDAA, is nullification the only viable route? Is there also room for people to file lawsuits? And who would that be filed against, do you know?
I've heard that there's some action that's taking place right now in terms of a multi-plaintiff lawsuit against the federal government over the NDAA. But you always got to come back to what's going to happen with that. You know, it's going to, even, let's just assume it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Is the federal Supreme Court going to take such a hard line against the rest of the federal government? I just don't see that happening, and there's not really a track record to suggest that that's what would happen. So yes, I believe that this is where we have to draw the line in our communities, in our states. If we have a decent state house, the county level is great. If you get a good constitutional sheriff involved in your county, get the county commissioner on board, like Peggy Littleton in El Paso County, Colorado, recognized the threat, immediately acted. They had something passed, I think, first out of anybody, any state, any county, any city. And this is what we can do on the local level. This is what the 10th Amendment says, that when the federal government does something that's outside of their carefully set parameters, we, as the top of the government totem pole in this country, have a right to say no.
Yeah, and I think obviously we have to step up and say no, because it's clear this tyranny is not going to stop. It's on that slippery slope, and it's accelerating towards full steam ahead. And so I feel like if we don't stop these kinds of bills from being accepted, we may never have another chance. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, when I talked to Stuart Rhodes about this the other day, he said point blank, this is what he studied when he was at Yale, finishing his law degree, was the turning of the domestic homeland into a war zone and applying warfare parameters to your own people. This is what you saw with Germany. This is what you saw with the USSR. This was a very common tactic for them to apply pressure to activists, to dissidents, to anybody that they wanted out of the way. And that's exactly how it happened. Yeah, classic tyranny. You know, I'm not an expert on nullification. I've always been a little foggy on it. And I feel like it's kind of a very scholarly term. Could you break it down, just totally simplify it for the total average listener, for the lowest common denominator of people who understand probably the basic Constitution and Bill of Rights, but maybe not what nullification is all about? Sure. Well, it's essentially, you can look to Thomas Jefferson as the one who fleshed out the doctrine. He worked with James Madison to produce the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions in 1798. And at that time, you had a federal government that was jailing newspaper editors for writing things that were, you know, stuff that they didn't like about the executive branch or the presidency at that time. They were literally 24 newspaper editors were behind bars. And Thomas Jefferson, who was the vice president at the time, said, this is not what we set up. This is not what all those men fought and died for. And he said that the nullification of the act is the rightful remedy anytime the federal government goes outside of the carefully lined boundaries of the Constitution. And I guess it also gets back to the basic Marbury versus Madison, all laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void on their face. Yeah, that's another reference right there. The bottom line is
we've been moved into a place in our zeitgeist where too many people consider the Supreme Court to be the final arbiter of what is constitutional and what is not constitutional. And that was not the system that we were given by the founders. We, the people of the several states, are the ones who made an agreement with the federal government, created the federal government, and when it gets out of line, we really need to treat it as an employee or as a servant rather than as this overlord, which is the way people see it right now. This is what we have walked away from as a people. The responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the American people for us being in this position right now, and it's up to us to turn it around.
Bruce Shanka, obviously NDAA has to be a line in the sand. How could people help? Do they need to contact their county and state representatives? What's the best way to get full momentum on this issue and get it spreading to as many states as possible?
Well, first off, go to 10thamendmentcenter.com. Up at the top, there's model legislation button that will show you all of our different bills that we have. Go ahead and grab the Liberty Preservation Act, grab the text, take it, share it with anybody you want to, show it to your legislators, get people talking about it, get people to realize that this is an option. This is the recourse that we have when they do something like give themselves the power to kidnap people. Get a good look at that bill and then take it to your state house, take it to your county commissioner, take it to your sheriff, and say, this is what we want, this is what we demand. Talk to your neighbors about it. Get a group of people, get a bunch of people writing emails and demanding this thing. That's what it will take. Again, Peggy Littleton, the county commissioner in El Paso County, Colorado, the first county to do this, her response to me when I asked her about it was, this is what the people wanted. This isn't me. I'm just facilitating. And if you've got good representatives at the local level and you've got enough people together saying, we're rejecting this kidnapping provision, then it will happen.
And people can, of course, find that at 10thamendmentcenter.com.
That's right.
And your work is at what website?
Sorry?
What was your other website where you have your work posted and your articles?
I also edit for the libertyvoice.com. Okay. Which is just an independent news website. We have some news and commentary on there. We've been reporting on this and a variety of other issues.
Well, let's hope people take this issue to the streets and to the representatives we still have, because, of course, we can do things at the state level still. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right. Good night. And that's all for tonight on the INFOWARS Nightly News. We'll be back again tomorrow, and Alex will continue to fill in from the road. Join us then, and please consider subscribing to support this broadcast. Help us reach as many people as possible to turn this back around. Good night.